zooming in on that, going deeper on that, there's this idea of the tortured artist, right? I think especially nowadays we romanticize the idea. I found myself doing it, which I think that's what this episode kind of encapsulates. Like I think Vincent van Gogh is the epitome of the tortured artist, and I think a lot of modern creators romanticize that I do want to be like him. Do want to be I give my soul to this work, and look at me, I'm just like on the floor dying, but my work is great. I think they would trade that for anything. What do you think about the idea of the tortured artist? Do you think that's like um, is just that? Do you think it's just a romantic idea? Do you think it has no place in reality if you want to be an artist?
No, I think that it's both. It depends on what perspective you're standing on, because some people will place a pedestal on the tortured artist, and that in itself is harmful because then you're following a tortured path. But it also is sort of like, well, if you're going to put yourself down the tortured pathway, you better do it correctly, you know? Like, if you want to be a tortured artist, you have to be prepared to be tortured, Like, you can't just expect fame to happen in your lifetime, because I don't know, if you're going to follow someone else's steps, right, you're going to lead to the same destination, which, in his case, he died before he became famous, and he died in a very tragic way where he thought of himself as, low, I think that, again, if you're going to follow the same pathway of someone else, you're going to end up in the same place. But if you're going to place something like that concept, tortured artist, on a pedestal, it's sort of like, it depends why you're doing that.
Why do you think people do that?
I think some people will do that because they feel that's the only way to become a famous artist, because so the majority of artists who are dead now, in the past and everything, they're all talked about in textbooks and stuff, and nowadays people who follow the creative arts, and performing arts in that case as well, they always want to be talked about. We all want to leave a mark on society and like, hey, I was here. Like the little graffiti thing, like Jasmine was here, Jeffrey was here. Everyone wants that because, innately everyone is afraid of death, and everyone's afraid of not existing and being forgotten about. So that's actually why, things like poetry and essays and books were written, because we're leaving something behind. We're leaving our messages and our lessons behind, so people below us can learn from our lessons. And that's why, you have artists and stuff who feel the same way, but can't we put things into words? They put it into pictures instead.
I mean, it brings in mind like this thing I saw, like the first kind of like the oldest painting or the oldest like mark for human being. It's like a red hand, like very, very thousands of years ago, maybe well before maybe just about where like Neanderthals or something. It's like a red hand, someone just pouring water, and you're thinking that person, there was no reason for him to do that. Like there was no like idea in their head.
I was here.
Literally, it was them, the very first artist, just like, please remember me, But I think that's like the ideas of human beings, the kind of like need for us to kind of like remain after we're gone is so innate within us, Is always like this thing. I think that's what makes a lot of artists, I own it. I say I want to be remembered when I'm gone. Not for the right reasons, though. Obviously, I want people to understand why I try to stand for the life that I tried to live, or like who I was and what I believed in, and hope it doesn't get distorted into something that people follow in the wrong way. But again, that's not up to you. Once you create your art, once you're gone, people will distort it however they want, and I think it would get taken and then, you repurpose for the ideas of that time.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's just like, you create for yourself now, and then you just hope in the future, whoever comes and takes that from you, it's, what I mean. And I think one thing I want to still talk about too was like Van Gogh had this idea of like, he could just see the world just beyond, like he was trying to show us the world just beyond, like he would paint not the world as it is, not like photorealistic, but like as the world as he saw it too.
Well, it could be.
Well, it could be. Talk to me a little bit about that. As an artist yourself, what do you think that comes from the need to show the world as it could be rather than as it is?
Because I feel like when you become self-aware, right? Some people aren't. I've met people who are not self-aware. And, I myself was not self-aware for a long time. When you become self-aware and you're on the journey of being self-aware, it's sort of like, and you realize that some people just miss the point in some things, and they live life fast and then they die fast, and you think, what was the point in that? So when he was painting things, like the colourful nighttime landscapes that he did, and the cafe, same cafe that he tried to sell his paintings to, and they rejected him. That was what the cafe was, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not sure if I am, but I'm pretty sure it was the cafe that he painted at nighttime, and it was all golden and glowy, and it was all beautiful.
Please show me that one, yeah.
And that was the same one that he tried to sell his paintings to, and they just laughed at him and said, you know, um, yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, um, no,
I think it's like the idea of like artists like trying to, because to me I'm trying to reach that point of like how, what is creativity a gift or is it a curse? Like it's like, we keep coming back to this thing about how Van Gogh had a difficult life. He was able to make this amazing thing, afterwards, and we can look at it and be like, oh my god, that's amazing. But like for him, it was a curse because, well, maybe he didn't feel like that, but I can imagine his lived experience was a curse. Going up to cafes and showing them your art and then saying no, feeling like you have to do the thing, but it doesn't make any money. So it's like, what am I doing? And, it's like the thing you could produce is not seen in society as worthy, but everyone around you kind of will champion you and say you're talented. When you're gone, they'll put you on a pedestal and say this is worth millions of pounds. Or where's that million when I'm alive?
Yeah, the most irritating thing about his whole life, right, in my opinion, is the fact, from his history, as you said, he started off, being aware about the world of art and how people use it for their own monetary gain, right? So you'll have a beautiful landscape painting, something like, um, you have the snowy, like, landscape pictures and just things that look like a picture of the place. And he's thinking, well, if I wanted to see it, I'll just go there. That's what I think that he would think. And people will deal these paintings, like, oh, 1 million, a few thousand for this one, a few thousand for that one. And he kind of felt despondent about the fact that these paintings are being used for monetary gain and they're not being seen for what they actually are, which is the artist's perspective. So he's thinking, if I create paintings, then they should be worth loads because it's from my perspective. What's the difference? But the fact is, obviously his own perspective was different.
But I think it was different enough that it made a difference after he died. Like that's what we cared, because it's like, okay, everyone in his time was doing the same thing, trying to do the thing that made them money, I guess, trying to make the most photorealistic. I don't know enough to make that statement. Trying to make the most photorealistic art paint, and then that's why they sold. But he was trying to do something that was like
different.
Like what we were talking before, like what he saw, what could be.
And the fact is, the thing that I was irritated about the most is the fact that the thing that he was trying to avoid his whole life, his paintings are now worth millions, and no one can really actually go there, like, physically to see them, because most likely they're fakes. And then you get those freaking stop oil people who did that thing on his painting. I'm not sure. I don't remember when it was.
Yeah.
And it was just like his entire life, his entire life purpose and journey was just completely.
That's what I was talking about before, about like, someone co-opting your ideas and your art for their own purposes, like even going against this. Like, I got nothing to do with this stuff or your stuff. Why is this as something that I'm now being used as a symbol of, or like
And they're basically assuming that there's paintings and stuff. Like, in one way they're right, because they're saying that these artworks, they're costing millions and whatever billions of pounds. I don't know how much it is. But it's completely just lost its focus and lost its purpose. He didn't create it to sell it. He created it for people to see.
for creation itself. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know him as a person, but I assume.
Vinny told me that.
I hope that's not who he
Vinny
was.
told me that. Okay, next question I had was on the process of creating. Now let's speak about as an artist yourself, right? What is the what role does isolation play in the creative process?
What role does isolation play in the creative process? Well, I feel like isolation is really important to be alone with your thoughts, to not be corrupted by outside, influences, that sort of thing. And I feel like, and the weird thing is, when you're talking about isolation and stuff, you have a lot of people who are stubborn, right? And they have their own set of morals, their own set of principles, and they just will not let any influence go in. So they go on this path of just my way is the right way. That's it, and that's their version of like a psychological isolation because they're not letting anything in. Um, but then when you're talking about if you have a physical isolation, for example, when Van Gogh was stuck in his house doing his paintings of his bedroom and of his self-portraits and stuff, that was him sort of trying to find himself again because that's where his root was. He was living there for a long time, so he was like, well, I'll do my own portraits to look at myself and be with myself. So there's different types of isolation you can go into. Some of them are harmful, some of them are good. And it depends on why you're going into isolation as well. Because some people will just, be sick of the world and want to have a break, and that's a good thing. Some of them will feel like they're too easily manipulated. So they want to find out what they actually believe in, which is why some people will go on solo trips around the world and stuff and look at all these cultures. So that's a type of isolation where you're by yourself, but you're outwards,
I completely agree. I think there's also like a searching within that comes with isolation, right? Like I can speak as a poet. Whenever I try to write something, I have to keep quiet, and then like you can't think about the audience when you're writing. You can't think about the process after the writing. It has to be just the process inside.
But you can't help it, can you?
You can't help it, and then you can't help it once you're finished. Like for me, like I understand, like I'm writing these words. Okay, I get as personal, as honest, like what I really want to say, how do I really express myself, and as I'm getting more and more confident in my process and who I am as a creator, I that line is more distinct for me that I don't really care. But then once I finish, and I'm like, okay, how do I perform this? Like, because almost every art, well, as a poet, in some way it has to be performed, even though I know it's not. There's some things I don't post, I don't perform. Like if I pull from saying something in the work, it's with the intention for it to be performed. So it's like that's also at the back of my mind. So it's that kind of process, and I can only do that in isolation. Yeah, I can only create when I'm away from people. I spend a lot of my life with people, in front of people, but also when I'm quiet alone is when I can find myself in the quiet moments of the night, almost. When I'm alone, just before I go to sleep, just in that liminal space between like waking and dreaming world.
Yeah.
Is when those ideas that come to me. I think that's such an important part too. Talk to me a little bit more about that too, like not just the isolation itself, but the mental space that you have to be in for creation. What is your mental space when you're creating? Where do you find yourself most of the time when you make most of your work?
Mm, I feel like I have to be on a spiral at some point. Either an upward or a downward. It doesn't matter which way.
The spiral is all the same.
It's all the same. It doesn't matter which way because the gravity is like all over the place. So you're either going up or down. And depending on your perspective, it can either be up or down even if you're going wherever. But I have particular phases that I go through. And it's usually right after the phase where I'm thinking nothing matters. It's usually when I'm thinking, screw it, what's the point? And then after I'm like, well, if nothing matters, then why don't I do this? It's sort of just like, it's always right after the whole phase of, what's the point in it all? There's no sort of, there's no purpose, there's no meaning. And then after that, I'm thinking, well, if there's no purpose, if there's no meaning, then why am I not doing this? There's no other, there's no excuse really.
Is that because you let go of expectations? You let go of the audience's like perception and just like do whatever you want to do?
Yeah, I sort of let go of just sort of my need for again my need for like being fit into society and stuff. Like when you just feel like you have to knuckle down, focus on one thing, you have to gain money, you have to have money to make money, that sort of thing, and you're just thinking that's the only way to be happy. You get caught up in the mindset because of the way that society is, like we can't live without money nowadays, which sucks, but it is what it is. And that's just sort of the what do you call it? It's like not hallucinatory, but like it's sort of like the illusion of society where you kind of get entranced into the whole monetary gain. You have to be gaining, otherwise you're losing, But then when you exhaust yourself from that point of view, get into the whole nothing matter stage, and you think, oh, okay, well now I'm back to my baseline where I'm like
As a human.
kind of like looking at the trees moving, and I'm like, oh, that could be a good painting.
Actual person, yeah. No, I call it the dunya because like it's like an Indian word that means like illusion of the world, like the things that the world's made up of, and it's like we all suffer from that. We have our own internal world, and business world outside of us that we have to conform to.
Yeah.
That I think a lot of artists struggle to balance that, which is why they want to be famous. It's a trap, right? It's like you want to be famous and successful, so you have the ability and the time to do what you want. But in order to do that, you have to really go deeper into the dunya, to really care about what they think of you, to really care about what other people and their audiences and perception and like, marketing and like selling. And then by the time you realize that you're too deep in, you become the
Yeah.
very thing you worked against.
And then you wake yourself up. You have to shake yourself up because it's like you just thinking to yourself, this is not what I believe in. There's this whole like delusion of thinking that you can be part of society, because society itself is a freaking trap.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
trap.
That is a trap. You heard it here first.
You know?
Okay. And even on that then, like, do you think artists have to be misunderstood to be great artists? I think, let me finish, let me cook. I did say, let me cook. I think Van Gogh was often misunderstood, right? Especially during his time. And I think even after his time. I think there's a sense of like, if you are a uniquely individual, most people are not going to understand you, because if you can exist as you are in the world, your perspective sometimes will align with people, but most of the time we'll get against what society expects for people. I think very few times we allow ourselves to be as individual as we can in order to be understood. And I think when I was younger, I remember writing the thing, I was like, all I want to be is understood, but I know I'll never be understood. Oh, woe is me, woe to me. Like, it was so stupid. Tears of a sad clown. But I think there's a perspective that you have to be misunderstood. I think that's what kind of I understood, or I kind of had to come to terms with that. Being misunderstood is okay. To be misunderstood is okay, because it means you're trying to live the life that you want to live rather than the life that people impose on you. So the question I have for you is that, do you think being misunderstood is a part of the creative journey, or do you think artists should strive to be understood in order to fit?
Um,